Hello everyone, welcome to this week's MB Rundown. We started the week June 12 Monday with the commemoration of the country's 119th Independence Day. It was indeed an emotionally filled celebration of national fervor as the whole nation took the opportunity to honor the heroes of Marawi City, the soldiers and civilians who refused to surrender our sovereignty to a band of terrorists called the Maute Group. That is why it was fitting that President Duterte delivered a message to all Filipinos to be more responsible individuals and to always be aware that we all have the responsibility to preserve our sovereignty as a Filipino nation. President Duterte also reminded us to always remember those who fought, were wounded, and even died, just so that our country will preserve its independence that we gained 119 years ago. From the battlefield, Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana reported last Monday that the government troops have already neutralized a considerable number of Maute terrorists with the killing of 191 of its members. Secretary Lorenzana also said that government forces have been able to isolate the militants in 4 villages of Marawi City. But conflicts like this will not be without any casualties, as Lorenzana also disclosed that 20 civilians have been killed. Nevertheless, Defense Secretary said that 1,613 people have been rescued from fighting in Marawi City. So far, 55,149 families have been displaced by the fighting, with 4,105 families staying in 71 evacuation centers and 49,525 families opting to stay with their relatives and friends. The Department of Social Welfare and Development also announced that it will be providing a one-time financial assistance of 1,000 pesos for each of the families who fled Marawi City. But even before Independence Day came, the government had already gained substantial ground in the fight against the Maute Group. Last June 11, the group's matriarch or Minta Romato Maute, also known as Farhana, was arrested at a military checkpoint together with 2 companions. The military has tagged Farhana as the financier who had been helping Abdullah and Omar Kayam Maute, her sons, in the Marawi City conflict that started last May 22. Farhana was arrested while she was in transit on board a Toyota Revo, along with 2 other individuals later identified as Maute kin as well. Authorities were able to track her down after reports said she was purchasing vehicles and weapons while planning their exit out of Lanao del Sur. Farhana's arrest was indeed another big catch for authorities after her husband, Engineer Kayamora Maute, was also arrested 5 days earlier on June 6 at a checkpoint in Sirawan, Toril, Davao City. Kayamora was with 3 members of his second family based in Cotabato City when he was collared by government forces. The fighting goes on as we bring to you this week's MB Rundown, yet it will be a huge oversight on our part if we do not acknowledge the heroism of those who dared stand up against these extremist militants or dare cross the divide created by religion just to preserve human lives. We report about this unnamed Muslim employer who shielded his Christian employees from the Maute terrorists, only to end up being taken by the ruthless extremists. This was disclosed by Salik Mai, a Peace Corridor volunteer who has been in touch with the 5 Christian staff since the beginning of the conflict. Another hero comes in the form of a young 24-year-old soldier who chose death over being rescued himself. He is Private First Class Dan Ryan Bayot of the 51st Infantry Battalion. And his was a remarkable tale of selflessness in the direst of times. When Bayot's group was already being overwhelmed by gunfire from the Maute Group, he asked for reinforcement that never came because all roads leading to them were blocked by enemy forces. Realizing that he was in the middle of enemy lines and all his comrades already dead, Bayot issued an unusual request over the radio to his commanding officer saying, "Bomb my location, sir." The rocket attack didn't come, but Bayot still had to contend with the enemy and fought it out with the terrorists who threatened to overrun their position. Bayot survived the attack, but not after sustaining deep cuts in his body and a wound on his neck, created when a terrorist held him by the head and threatened to decapitate him. Barangay officials and civic religious leaders led some of the residents in marching back to their city to inspect the surroundings before hoisting the Philippine flag at the provincial capital. It was a sight to behold, as we were told. Indeed, a determined statement of defiance against terrorism, and in this case, the Maute Group. It is also worth noting that on June 10, foreign support started to pour in to solve the problem in Marawi City. Indonesia expressed their willingness to help the Philippines with intelligence information on the terrorists, while American Special Forces are also lending a hand to the Armed Forces of the Philippines, who, according to Lieutenant Colonel Joar Herrera, spokesman of the Army's 1st Infantry Division, are just providing technical support and will not be directly involved in the fighting. Moving forward and looking into a bright future, last June 10, it was reported that an executive order for the 10 billion peso rehabilitation program for Marawi City called Bangon Marawi has already been prepared and was just waiting President Duterte's signature. Bangon Marawi will be undertaken by the Engineering Brigade of the Armed Forces of the Philippines to help Marawi residents return to their normal everyday lives as soon as possible. While the Department of National Defense was chosen to spearhead the reconstruction and rehabilitation because of its engineering battalion. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council will also be working closely with both agencies. According to Presidential Spokesperson Ernesto Abella, the recovery, reconstruction, and rehabilitation of Marawi City will take at least 6 months after the city is liberated from terrorist groups. To add to the efforts to rehabilitate and rebuild Marawi, Deputy Minority Leader and Kabayan Party List Representative Harry Roque filed House Bill 5874 entitled the Tindog Marawi Bill that will provide 10 billion pesos as part of a supplemental budget. This will be divided equally among the Department of National Defense, Department of Education, Department of Public Works and Highways, the Department of Social Welfare and Development, and the National Housing Authority. Agencies which are expected to be at the forefront of the tedious task of helping Marawi to get back on its feet. So those were the top headlines for this week, but we would like to hear what you have to say, so make sure that you use the hashtag MB Rundown in all your comments, status, and tweets. I'll see you again next week.